Okay, this is our second installment. It's a two-parter. We just talked about bookstores and libraries. Now we're reading excerpts. Okay, so I had an incredible homeroom teacher, Mrs. Becker, 5th grade, Monahans, Texas, and she read A Wrinkle in Time, Madeline L'Engle, chapter by chapter.
So we're going to be reading excerpts from books that inspired us as children and later.
Yeah, Franny and Zoe I found later, but this I found as a kid, A Wrinkle in Time. What is it I have got that it hasn't got? You have nothing that it hasn't got, Charles Wallace said coldly. How nice to have you back, dear sister. We have been waiting for you. We knew that Mrs. Watson would send you. She is our friend, you know. For an appalling moment, Meg believed, and in that moment she felt her brain being gathered up into it. No, she screamed at the top of her lungs. No, you lie. For a moment she was free from its clutches again. As long as I can stay angry enough, it can't get me. Is that what I have that it doesn't have? Nonsense, Charles Wallace said. You have nothing that it doesn't have. You're lying, she replied, and she felt only anger toward this boy who was not Charles Wallace at all. No, it was not anger. It was loathing. It was hatred, sheer and unadulterated. And as she became lost in hatred, she also began to be lost in it. The red miasma swam before her eyes. Her stomach churned in its rhythm. Her body trembled with the strength of her hatred and the strength of it. With the last vestige of consciousness, she jerked her mind and body. Hate was nothing that it didn't have. It knew all about hate. You are lying about that, and you are lying about Mrs. Watson, she screamed. Mrs. Watson hates you, Charles Wallace said. And that was where it made its fatal mistake. For as Meg said automatically, Mrs. Watson loves me. That's what she told me, that she loves me. Suddenly she knew love. That was what she had that it did not have. She had Mrs. Watson's love and her father's and her mother's and the real Charles Wallace's love and the twins and Aunt Beast. And she had her love for them. But how could she use it? What was she meant to do? If she could give love to it, perhaps it would shrivel up and die, for she was sure that it could not withstand love. But she, in all her weakness and foolishness and baseness and nothingness, was incapable of loving it. Perhaps it was not too much to ask of her, but she could not do it. But she could love Charles Wallace. She could stand there and she could love Charles Wallace, her own Charles Wallace, the real Charles Wallace, the child for whom she had come back to Camazotz, to it, the baby who was so much more than she was and who was yet so utterly vulnerable. She could love Charles Wallace. Charles, I love you, my baby brother who always takes care of me. Come back to me, Charles Wallace. Come away from it. Come back. Come home. I love you, Charles. Oh, Charles Wallace, I love you. Tears were streaming down her cheeks, but she was unaware of them. Now she was even able to look at him, at this animated thing that was not her own Charles Wallace at all. She was able to look and love. I love you. Charles Wallace, you are my darling and my dear and the light of my life and the treasure of my heart. I love you, I love you, I love you. Slowly his mouth closed. Slowly his eyes stopped their twirling. The tick in the forehead ceased its revolting twitch. Slowly he advanced toward her. I love you, she cried. I love you, Charles, I love you. Then suddenly he was running, pelting. He was in her arms. He was shrieking with sobs. Meg, Meg, Meg. I love you, Charles, she cried again, her sobs almost as loud as his, her tears mingling with his. I love you, I love you, I love you. Okay. Do you want to read your Planet of Apes now?
Yes.
Okay.
So your teacher reading that book to you inspired you to read, right?
That is the first book that I encountered that really turned me on to books in a passionate, real way, an insane way, where I wanted more.
Well, the same kind of thing happened to me, but in a little bit different way. So, Pierre Roulet wrote stuff that ended up being movies like Bridge on the River Kwai and Planet of the Apes. This came out in the 60s, and Charlton Heston did the movie adaptation of Planet of the Apes in 1968. Very famous classic sci-fi film.
Yes.
However, I didn't see that movie in 1968. I was only 3 and I lived in a different country.
Yeah.
So, but when we came stateside in the 70s, on television was the TV series The Planet of the Apes, and I was enthralled with it. I thought it was amazing. I was probably like 7, 8 years old or whatever. It was incredible for an 8-year-old.
But isn't that unusual that they had the TV show and then also the movie? Because back then, it wasn't a thing.
Well, yeah.
Media was a lot more limited back then.
It was, and I'm sure, on some Saturday morning, one of the networks played the movie with Charlton Heston, and I got exposed to the whole thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I couldn't get enough of the Planet of the Apes.
Right.
It was amazing.
They had the lunchbox. And
they had the little action figures.
The action figures.
And I came across the book from Planet of the Apes, so I was well versed in the story of Planet of the Apes. It starts out with Charlton Heston crash landing on the alien world, which turns out to be Earth, but he didn't know it, and it's in the future, and all this.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I saw the book. I was like, oh my gosh, it's a book. I want to get the book. So I started reading the book. So this was the moment when I opened the book. I'm going to read the first passage because it is completely something else. The book is not like the movie. And when that hits you at a young age and you realize there's more in the book than in the movie, that inspired me forever. The books are always better.
Yes.
Anyway, so part 1, it starts out like this. If you've never read the book, but you know Planet of the Apes, this is going to blow you away, like it did me when I was 8 years old or whatever. Jin and Phyllis were spending a wonderful holiday in space, as far away as possible from their inhabited stars. In those days, interplanetary voyages were an everyday occurrence, and interstellar travel not uncommon. Rockets took tourists to the wondrous sights of Sirius, or financiers to the famous stock exchanges of Arcturus and Aldebaran. But Jin and Phyllis, a wealthy, leisured couple, were distinguished in their cosmos for their originality and a few grains of poetry. They wandered over the universe for their pleasure by sail. Their ship was a sort of sphere with an envelope, the sail, which was miraculously fine and light, and were moved through space, propelled by the pressure of light radiation. Such a machine left to its own devices in the vicinity of a star, though far enough away for the field of gravity not to be too powerful, will always move in a straight line in the opposite direction to the star. But since Jin and Phyllis's stellar system contained 3 suns that were relatively close to one another, their vessel received rays of light along 3 different axes. Jin had therefore conceived an extremely ingenious method of steering. His sail was lined inside with a series of black blinds that he could roll up or unroll at will, thus changing the effect of the light pressure by modifying the reflecting power of certain sections. Furthermore, this elastic envelope could be stretched or contracted as the navigator pleased. Thus, when Jin wanted to increase his speed, he gave it his biggest diameter possible. It would then take the blast of radiation on an enormous surface, and the vessel would hurtle through space at a furious velocity, which made his mate Phyllis quite dizzy. He would also be overcome by vertigo, and they would then cling passionately together, their gaze fixed on the mysterious and distant depths to which their flight propelled them. When, on the other hand, they wanted to slow down, Jin pressed a button and the sail would shrink until it became a sphere just big enough to contain them both, packed tightly together. The effect of the light became negligible, and this minute bubble, reduced to nothing more than its own inertia, seemed motionless, as though suspended in the void by an invisible thread. The young couple would spend their rapturous idle hours in this reduced universe, erected on their own scale and for them alone, which Jin compared to be a beclaimed sailing a ship, and Phyllis to their air bubble of the sea spider. Jin knew a number of other tricks, considered as the height of art by sailing cosmonauts. For example, making the use of shadows of the planets and certain satellites in order to change course. He imparted this skill to Phyllis, who was now almost as accomplished as himself, and often more daring. When she held the tiller, she would sometimes fire a broadside that swept them right to the borders of the solar system, heedless of the resulting magnetic storm, which would start to upset the light rays and to shake their skiff like a cockleshell. On 2 or 3 occasions, waked up with a start by the tempest, Jin had quite a struggle snatching the tiller from her, and ordered her to run for shelter as quickly as possible, starting the auxiliary rocket, which they made it a point of honor never to use in case of danger. So they had a rocket, but only used it in extreme danger. One day, Jin and Phyllis were lying side by side in the middle of their spacecraft without a care in the world, making the most of their holiday by exposing themselves to the rays of their 3 suns. Eyes closed, Jin was thinking only of his love for Phyllis. Phyllis lay stretched out on her side, gazing at the immensity of the universe and letting herself be hypnotized, as she often did, by the cosmic sensation of the void. All of a sudden, she came out of her trance, wrinkled her brow, and sat up. An unusual flash of light had streaked across this void. She waited a few seconds and then saw a second flash, like a ray being reflected off a shiny object. The cosmic sense she had acquired in her course of the 3 cruises could not deceive her. Moreover, Jin, when it was pointed out to him, agreed with her, and it was inconceivable that he should make a mistake in this manner. A body sparkling in the light was floating through space at a distance they could not yet assess. Jin picked up a pair of binoculars and focused them on the mysterious object, while Phyllis leaned on his shoulder. It's not a very big object, he said. It seems to be made of glass. No, let me look. It's drawing closer. It's going faster than we are, it looks like. A puzzled expression came into his eyes. He lowered the binoculars, which she at once snatched up. It's a bottle, darling, a bottle. She looked at it in turn. Yes, it is a bottle. I can see it quite clearly now. It's made of light-colored glass. It's corked. I can see the seal. There's something white inside that looks like a paper. A message, obviously. Jin, we've got to get hold of it. Jin was of the same opinion and had already embarked on some skillful maneuvers to place the sphere on the trajectory of the unusual body. He soon succeeded, and then reduced his own speed to enable it to catch up with him. Meanwhile, Phyllis donned her diving suit and made her way out of the sail by the double trap door. There, holding onto a rope with one hand and brandishing a long-handled scoop in the other, she stood in readiness to retrieve the bottle. It was not the first time they had come across strange bodies, and the scoop had already been in use. Sailing at low speed, sometimes completely motionless, they had enjoyed surprises and had made discoveries that were precluded to travelers by rocket. In her net, Phyllis had already gathered up remnants of pulverized planets, fragments of meteorites that had come from the depths of the universe, and pieces of satellites launched at the onset of the conquest of space. She was very proud of her collection, but this was the first time they had come across a bottle, and a bottle containing a message. Of that she was certain. She trembled from head to foot with impatience, gesticulating like a spider at the end of its thread. She shouted down the telephone to her companion, "Slower, Jin! No, a bit faster. A bit faster than that. It's going to pass us. Starboard. Now hard to port. Hold it. I've got it." She gave a triumphant cry and came back inside with her trophy. It was a largish bottle, and its neck had been carefully sealed. A roll of paper could be seen inside. "Jin, break it open. Hurry up," Phyllis begged, stamping her foot. Less impatient, Jin methodically chipped off the sealing wax. But when the bottle was thus opened, he saw that the paper was stuck fast and could not be shaken out. Therefore, he yielded to his mate's entreaties and smashed the glass with a hammer. The paper unrolled of its own accord. It consisted of a large number of very thin sheets covered with tiny handwriting. The message was written in the language of Earth, which Jin knew perfectly, having been partly educated on that planet. An uncomfortable feeling, however, restrained him from starting to read a document that had fallen into their hands in such an incongruous manner. But Phyllis's state of excitement decided him. She was not so well acquainted with the language of Earth and needed his help. "Jin, please!" He reduced the volume of the sphere so it floated idly in space. He made sure that there were no obstacle in front of them, and then he lay down beside his companion and began to read the manuscript. This, of course, if you know the story, is the story of the astronaut played by Charlton Heston and the story of his crash landing on Earth in the future when everything has changed. But reading that passage and seeing how it differed from the movie sparked my imagination and fueled my love for books. And from that moment on, I looked for everything that I wanted to read. And it's something I've often imparted to our son. Whatever subject you're interested in that's on YouTube or in a movie, get a book. You'll learn more. You'll be entertained more. There's more information there.
Yeah.
And so
he doesn't have the same love for books that we have. It's different for his generation. But
we hope that you will join us for another reading of other passages, and I hope...
Oh, we're not going to read these last two?
I don't want it to go too long. But I do hope that you share some of your favorite
I really
books
wanted
with
to
us.
read the Franny and Zoe. I read it 2 times today, so maybe the third time would just be too much. But yeah, this passage has more spiritual meaning to me than any passage from any book ever. But A Wrinkle in Time is a very close second. So I'll read the excerpt from Franny and Zoe, J.D. Salinger, at a later time.
And I will read from 2 of my other favorites at a later time as well.
Okay.
For now, as we await part 2, we are going to
end transmission.